It's, fourth day of March, it's this 2025. I keep thinking it's February. I don't know why, but I'll go back. Beautiful gray day, so, we need a motion to accept the agenda. And by Booker, second by Yipman, any additions to the agenda? I would say, potentially, maybe asking for correspondence depending on how things go in closed session, so correspondence to the county. So the other one I checked. No other agenda as amended, then all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Any declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, then we'll have the minutes of the February 18th meeting. We have a mover and a seconder for that, moved by Gillis, seconded by Durston. Any discussion on the minutes, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. And business arising from that. Anything there, Julie, do you want to mention?
No, nothing to add unless there's any questions.
Any questions on this report? Seeing none, do we have a mover and a seconder to receive this information? Councillor Yitman, is that a movement or a question?
No, that's a question. Talking about the Durham Center Hall, I was not aware repairs needed to the roof before they could insulate.
I wasn't either until now.
Okay.
So we need to connect with the Durham Center Hall Board about that. I wasn't sure if they were aware of it either and how it's going to be funded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, we haven't had a discussion about it, and we haven't had a meeting for some time either. Our next scheduled meeting is March 19th, the AGM.
Okay, I will forward you and Carol the quote that was received, which outlines what the issues are and cost to repair.
Did that keep there? Okay.
Just one other note, the building grant or fund application has been submitted, so.
Okay, nothing else on that report? Back to it. Good motion then to receive the information moved by the second by the result of Council Pension Subject Office Report CL 15/2025. This is right from the minutes of February 18th, 2025. This information any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. First appointment is for 9:05 and I guess it's quarter of the business. So do we need a motion to rise to
So we need a motion to appoint Porter Revision and move into Porter Revision for.
Okay, so a motion to appoint Councilors Gillis, Shipman, and Buchner to the Court of Revision for Vincent Drain. Moved by Gillis, seconded by Durston. Any discussion on the motion? None, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. And we need a motion to go into.
I'll do it all as one.
Okay.
Last time.
And we move into the Court of Revision. So, Councilor Gillis, you're the chair.
Oh, welcome. So we'll begin for revision. We'll talk about the Vincent Drain. Order, call to order at 9:05. Approval of the agenda by Pete, seconded by Paul. Correct. Gary. Vote, information of the assessment. Clerk has received no verbal or written appeals on this drain. Nobody is registered from the public to speak to this drain. It asked if there are any members of the public that want to speak towards this drain assessment.
I can't hear. Drain assessment.
Is there any members of the public that want to speak to this drain assessment?
Yeah, I think that as I was looking at it on the paper there, I'm on the northeast corner of Brownsville, on the four corners. And I'm thinking by looking at them, some of the properties are, I might be speaking loud because I got a thing in my ear. But anyway, some of the properties there of the same size, I don't know why I'm being charged more.
So,
I know they say I know they say there's about the roof size. But my water runs either to the east on that property if it runs, and to the north, the other property. So I don't have, I disagree with the amount I'm being charged.
yeah,
Sorry, so first thing, can I get you to tell me your name, please?
pardon?
Can I have your name, please?
Warner Taylor.
Warren.
Going further to that, if we can, I'll ask, the engineer to answer that question.
I know they do also say about the roof, the size of your roof.
Yes, I can say that, when assessments are calculated,
So maybe you, Mr. Taylor, if you want to come up, so we can.
Now, he's got a flood here, so he's got
Yeah.
a thing at the.
Well,
I'll do is,
sit on whatever side is best for Mr. Taylor, so,
coming over here?
Yeah.
Okay,
thanks, Mike.
Just, it'd be okay if you just lower it down to where it should be with everybody.
okay.
Do you want me to sit second chair for me?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, I'll sit right by. I can hear you better.
Okay, typically when drains are assessed out, there's two different types of assessment. There's what's referred to as benefit and what's referred to as outlet. In your case, you are being assessed outlet. So the benefit calculations, a lot of our calculations are done to separate benefit from outlet and then apportion the benefit to the properties that would be receiving benefit. And then assess the outlet to the properties that would have water that would go to the drain. We use the existing bylaws in general, because there are previous bylaws that establish the limit of the watershed. We don't go out and investigate particularly each property to say, yes, this property is in the watershed or not. We rely on the previous documentation unless there's a concern that's raised. If there's a concern that's raised, we may have to go out and physically investigate that. So whether you're in or out is based on previous documentation. Then, once you're in, then we have to say, how much water does your property send into the drain? The size of the property, obviously, the larger the property, the more water you're gonna have going into the drain. But the other factor is land use or how much hard surfaces you have on your property. That could be roof, could be driveway, sidewalks. Those sort of hard surfaces will not allow the water to seep into the ground. It makes the water run off the ground faster. So for properties that have more hard surface, less water can seep into the ground, and more water will run off the property ultimately and get into the drain. So the Drainage Act dictates that outlet is by the volume of water that each property sends towards the drain. Your property, in this case, has more roof area and more hard surface than, say, some of the other ones of similar size. So your rate per acre would be a little higher compared to those. I believe what you're looking at is this property, I believe, is assessed $209 for outlet, and some of the other properties are assessed $149. So that's the difference. That's because of the amount of hard surface. Your properties are the same size, but it's because of the amount of hard surface. If you're indicating that you think that some of the water doesn't get to the drain, that's a different concern. That's saying some of the water doesn't get there, so I shouldn't pay as much. But if you're thinking that it's because of the hard surfaces, that's something that's a different calculation. So there's two kind of independent things that I'm hearing. If you think that not all of your property would have water going to the drain, and some of your property will go in a different direction, that's something that we need to know or to understand as part of the argument, or is it just strictly because you think your property is no different than a neighbor's property? Those are, so I would ask.
In my opinion, I would say that my water is not all going into that drain, it's going other directions.
Because there is, that property is on the boundary of the watershed, so if water from that property would go out onto part of Brownsville Road, it wouldn't be in the watershed. So if this, well, if the owner's correct, then then there should be a reduction for the amount of area, and you would adjust the boundary line. A little bit, the roof, I believe the roof line, the peak of the roof is running east-west.
Yeah.
So anything on the north side would go to the north boundary, and anything on the south side would go to the south boundary, and maybe what you're saying is that the south boundary goes out on Brownsville Road instead of getting onto Clover Road. Is that?
It's going over on the other one.
So if that's the case, then you can either, as the court, you can either accept what the landowner's saying or instruct me to go investigate it. Ultimately, the assessment's $209. It's not a lot of money. It's gonna cost more to go out and investigate it than it would to, in this case, probably drop it in half. If the roof lines of the building is situated pretty much in the center of the property.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but the property is pretty small. The building looks like from aerial photography that on my drawing, it looks like the building is pretty much in the center. So if the roof line is it, then that property would have its area reduced to 50% and its assessment reduced to 50%, which is roughly $104. If that's the case, you can either choose to accept it or have me investigate it. If the court decides to reduce it, then you have to take that $104 and put it somewhere else. And again, if the choice is to adjourn the court of revision, have me make the changes and then reconvene at a later date. Or move it on to an assessed party that's present at the meeting, which would be the township, it would be the road. So you could move it on to a municipal road and be done with it today and not have to reconvene later. It is something that has happened in the past. I'm not saying anything is right or wrong, but it's something that I've seen done to take care of a change immediately.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't think we can move it onto a municipal road in this instance, since both Brownsville Road and Culloden Line are county roads, not Squax roads.
There are township roads within the watershed that you could choose to move it onto.
Are you talking the streets within Brownsville?
Yes,
Okay,
there are a number of them. There is Glover Street, Inks Street, a little bit of Rolfe Street that would be involved. So you could choose to put it onto probably Glover. It would be the one I would pick if you were to decide to do that. Economically and efficiency wise, I've seen municipalities do it to take care of it. Otherwise, you would have to adjourn and reconvene and make formal changes and then notify everybody of those changes later.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Daniel Leduc, do you have any comment on this or not?
I mean. Yeah, it would be quite a process to go back and to go through everything and it would be cost more than $100 or difference or whatever.
Are you in agreement with the opposition to the assessment?
I can see where he's coming from, that the south part of his roof potentially drains Brownsville Road and has more of a woolly drain. I could see that argument, yeah.
So I'll ask the members of court of revision, they've heard the chief complaint, they've heard the developer's comments. Suggestion, motion?
I would move that we reassess it to the Glover Street.
Would that be, say, half?
Whatever the
Yeah, I believe when you look at the aerial photography, the building looks to be pretty much centered on the property. So if the roof line truly is that break, then it would be half of the property. You would reduce the assessed area.
that would be $104 you were saying?
Yeah,
I'll make that
yeah,
amendment.
the current assessment is 209.
Go ahead and make a motion, then. I don't know.
Well, 1 second. Paul's making that motion,
Yes.
seconded by,
I will.
all right, comments on the motion? Adam?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I'd like the engineer to take a look at it, I mean, if it's water that's being owning all that property should be assessed to the drain in question, then that should be what's paid for. On the other hand, we're gonna spend we're gonna spend 1,000 to save 100. On the other hand, we're assessing it to something that doesn't gonna benefit, the road is not gonna benefit any $104 more, is what I'm getting at, so. It's kind of a catch-22, I mean, it cleans everything up in a really economical way, but it's not proper, I don't think, unless we have the engineer. look at it. That's what I'm, maybe David, or you think I'm saying?
You want me to go and sit over there somewhere? Remember?
No.
I'm happy to go.
That's-
Okay,
Any other comments?
I would comment that the engineer brought a report forward and said, no, this should be in this, this drainage area. And, granted, it's borderline. And so I would suggest that the engineer either made a mistake, or this should not be heard. Because, why should the township pay for a mistake, if it's a mistake done by the engineer? So, Mike wants to.
Yeah, if I could. We rely on previous documentation. We don't go and investigate the entire watershed as part of this process. There was a report done in 2004 from another engineer for Vincent Drain. So we rely on that information. If there's a concern and we're asked to investigate something, we will. But we don't typically do that until there's a concern that's raised.
Any other comment?
With all due respect to the mayor's comments, as a member of the public in this instance, to me, it's a matter of picking the poison that we want to swallow, whether it's, you know, to pay a large bill for reassessment or to pay a small bill and just have this dealt with. And that's my reasoning for seconding this.
So I just wonder how this impacts the Woolly Drain in the future. Because now we have a property that is not being assessed to this drain, but isn't being assessed to the Woolly Drain either. Or half a property value. And that then becomes a problem that we have a property that's getting free drainage and everybody else pays.
Well, curtail that question to the engineer. Mike?
Yes, the water would get out onto Brownsville Road and then go west down the storm sewer to the Vincent downstream. So they would still be involved with the downstream Vincent at 100%. It's the upstream Vincent. We're only starting north of Brownsville Road.
Okay.
That's good.
And to that comment from Mayor Mayberry, would that not be captured in the new fund that we have just established to take care of village drainage?
My understanding is yes, moving forward, once we have that in place, all of the residential properties within the settlement boundary, their assessments will be paid through the stormwater financing and operations plan. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll be captured at that point in time.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. Can you quick read back that motion? Make sure.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Buckner, seconded by Councillor Yigma, that the Board of Revision move to reassess Mr. Taylor's assessment by 50% and reallocate those funds to the assessment for Glover Street.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Fair to vote? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, that's carried. So, with that, we put forward, moving the assessment schedule as amended. So moving the, assessment schedules as amended. Do I have a motion on that? Councilor Yipma, seconded. Councilor Brugner. With comments? Nothing? All in favor? Carried. Okay, that's it for, revision.
Just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Paul, second by Pete at 9:21. Favors. Carried.
Okay, so we're back now to council. Thank you very much. Any work that you need to do on this, Mike? As far as changing the schedule or anything?
No, if staff wishes us to provide a revised schedule with a revised sketch showing that change, I would be happy to do that. It's just whether they wanna just mark up what you have. You people doing it, or you want us to do it, that's something they can decide.
I'm pretty sure Daniel can do that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, Mike. Go ahead. We need to move back to council. So you're.
No, you sure.
Okay, I need to be in the council. Okay. So we're at CO report, CO 6/2025 engineering proposal. And for the next phase, full building, so. Julie, I guess you're taking all questions today.
Yeah, I can speak to it briefly, just that, as council knows, we have been working with SPH Engineering on some preliminary design work for the new build. We met with him at the end of January just to review the draft designs, provide some comments and ask for some amendments. Coming from that, he's provided us with quotes to continue to proceed. The goal being, once we move forward with the updated conceptual design for the municipal office and childcare, we'd be bringing in an architect to help with that work as well. And then also working on the design for the retaining wall on the east side of the property, subject property that we'll be building on. So we're just looking for council support to go forward with that design work, and staff is proposing that we fund the costs from the township's modernization reserve.
Okay, so, at some point, it would seem probably the council should have a discussion on what we're actually building. And having a motion on the floor to proceed, set motion, and we have a motion. We seconded it and carried that we're actually building a new building and, correction to have that consideration, but, so, and maybe we don't need that today, because we may need to hear what the implications are from cost and everything else, right? I'm just saying, at some point, we need to formalize this process, and in that formalizing the process, I think we need to talk about, what are we building? I'm pretty clear in my mind what it should be building, but the optional extras, and I would suggest that, the more I think, the more I like the idea of having a library in this building as well. And whether there's a need to have a council chamber on a separate floor from the administration building, or whether it could be all fit into one. And not having seen any current preliminary drawings, I'm just wondering where council wants to go on this. Councilor, you're first.
I'm gonna go back to the report that's in front of us and just ask one question about that prior to any further comments. So in the background, it says township engaged SPH engineering in 2024. And I remember that, but I don't remember ever seeing a quote for, or a call for proposals or anything like that in terms of appointing that specific firm to do the work for us. And I'm just wondering how we arrived at SPH.
SPH is the same company that did the work for Township of Zora and was recommended through Dawn in Zora. We did not do a call for proposal. I know that a report came forward to do the design work. If you want to give me a minute, I can try and find that.
I'm just wondering if this falls in line with our requirement of ourselves to procure at least 3 quotes for work to be done for the township.
I think the amounts fall under, they did that right, we're under 25,000.
Individually, but not collectively. By the time we're done, we're over it, so.
Just gonna go back, I'm gonna see if I can find Barry Allen's report.
I guess my overall concern about this is that we seem to have jumped to this one firm right now, and I don't want to go into a project like this with blinders on that only focus us in one particular direction when somebody else might have an equally or even better option available through a different train of thought.
So part I'm struggling at, and it's the same, I have exactly the same concern. But I'm not sure how far SPH is actually going as far as a conceptual drawing, as in how many square feet you need for office and how many square feet you need for A, B, and C, right? To me, that's the conceptual, the actual, where you're putting the desks and where you're putting the wiring and all that sort of stuff in the outside design of the building. Is where you get to the architect and that sort of thing. So I guess I'm not, like you, I'm not sure how far we're going down this train because, or this road, other than on the grand or the macro scale of number of square feet. And, because, we've never had a discussion on things like energy efficiency or, what the building facade should look like, or, you know, do we ever need requirements for this, that, or the other within the building? And so, all those conversations, I think, need to happen and they need to happen before you hire an architect. So the concept is still kind of the macro scale, the 35,000 foot level, looking at this. I'm fine with that. I just, like you, I would like 3 or 4 different architects to bid on the project and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do for architects, engineers, whatever it is.
What is that step 2 of this process, and that we're okay to go ahead with this report as written? And expect that those finer details are gonna be looked at in step 2 of the process.
So, and that's where I started leading with the conversation around what do we actually want, because if in fact, we want a 3rd floor or not, to me would impact greatly what the concept drawing might look like the number of square feet, right? And, I hadn't actually ever thought of putting the, council chambers on the 3rd floor. Mary Ellen suggested that, to me. I'm not opposed to it. I would say what function requires the maximum number of square feet? So if that's the childcare function or the administration function, and then you build from there, right? But if the childcare function requires 8,000 square feet, and the township only needs 6,000 for administration, plus a couple thousand for council chambers. Well, maybe that would fit on 2 floors. But then the next question becomes, well, how badly do I want? And just personally, how badly do I want the library moved into that building as well? So, again, I'm very open to any kind of conversation on this, but I think at some point we ought to have that conversation and collectively have to agree this is where we're going. And to a certain extent, it was raised last time, is it more expensive to go 3 floors than 2? Well, I hope so, but proportionally, is it? Well, no, it's gonna have no there anyway, so. Go
So
ahead, Julie.
my understanding is some of those questions in terms of space requirements would be answered from these next set of conceptual drawings. The first set that we received were primarily to look at the high level site plan, space on the property in Mount as well as the number of required parking spaces. From those conceptual drawings, we found things that definitely had to change. So we have them, and we had a conversation about, we need to make sure that the main priorities, we have enough space for our office building. And then everything else will kind of, be spaced based on what those needs are as the first priority. And so that's what we're hoping to get from this. And my understanding is, once we have these conceptual drawings, these will come back to council. And at that point, we'll be looking at an architect and whether we continue on with SPH engineering or somebody else.
So, and I would go back to say, well, staff might think the most important thing of this element of this building is administration. They don't get to decide. And so council, and quite frankly, you're next on the line, that's all of us are. And so we need to make sure we've done it right to our satisfaction, and totally respecting what staff are suggesting, but I think we've got to make sure that we're gonna have a product at the end of this that actually serves the needs and satisfies the needs of the community. And which would go back in my mind to saying, of the 2 or 3 functions that we, if we want this building to be more than 2 functions, which are the most important, and so I don't know, childcare, 88 spaces for childcare taking more square feet than administration building.
So maybe I misunderstood. I thought that was the direction at the strategic planning session when we talked about the bill, that we needed to make sure that it was big enough for our office and then we could space things based on that. So maybe I misunderstood that. But we know that the 88 spaces, on the beginning, the preliminary drawing that he provided, it was built for 88 space childcare.
So,
Because that was another thing that we communicated, we have to have at least 88 spaces for childcare.
right, so then, I don't know how many square feet that is, but then does the administration office fall within that number of square feet? Or are you telling me that the administration office is bigger than 88?
That's what we need to find out from this
Okay.
next step,
Okay. And then how much bigger or smaller?
and that's what we need to find out, we don't have that information yet.
Okay. Councilor, you're next.
Yeah, in terms of, you mentioned moving the library into there, and I would be fully supportive of that. But that goes again to part of this study, if it's gonna be prohibitively expensive to put a third floor on this building, then we need to reassess, right? Then there's not gonna be room for the library per se, unless we include it in part of this first or second floor. I will say that I did talk to one of my constituents just in the last few days. Somebody who's not known for speaking off the cuff very much. And expressed vehement opposition to this entire project, in particular the daycare portion of it. And so we have to be cautious how we move ahead on this project. I still fully support it. I think it's needed. But it's hard to know. It's you can't get the cart before the horse, and we're trying to assess space allocation, for instance, for the library. But is the library board going to be willing to pay the price that's necessary for a facility that is almost 3 times the size of what they have now, right? Obviously, the rent can't be the same. And so there's a lot of balls in the air on this one, and I'm not sure how we get them all to settle down in the proper order.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think that without kind of moving forward with this next step, we don't have a lot of these answers. We need to know how much space is exactly required, we need for the childcare, we need to know exactly how much space is required in the office. And if we're gonna have a third story, how big is it gonna be and what will we be able to fit in there? So. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, the library board is aware that the township is maybe considering doing this. So I think it's a case of though, if you don't know what the size and, because they rent other spaces in other places, right? So, but if you don't know the size, then it's hard to sort of say what they're interested in or not. If we're getting 10,000 square feet, they're not interested. 2,000 square feet, they're interested. Yeah. And then the price becomes the next issue, so. Go ahead.
But I think your suggestion that the library move to the new bill makes a lot of sense, because you're running into the same problem as the park. Nobody was crossing the street to get to the library, like you just don't get the foot traffic to get to the park. It's the same, could be the same with the library, all your users are on the west side. So does it not make sense to move the library so maybe it gets better use? Just a thought.
Councilor Gillison, Councilor.
So I agree, that conceptually, we should kind of move this forward to get a full of what's needed space wise and going from there. And I think from what I read here about, retaining wall, despite whatever might be built on that property, you're gonna need that either way. So I think that is pretty straightforward for us to agree upon. I think that in the next meeting or the first meeting of the next month, council should have, if we get information back from here, council should have a meeting saying this is exactly what we want, or this is what we don't want, and going from there. That's just my thought.
Okay, and Councilor.
Just for the benefit of the rest of council, at the Mount Elgin Hall Board, we've been planning for some time an expansion onto the building there as well. Roughly, we assessed 600 square feet is necessary to reclaim areas that are now being used for storage, so that, and clearly were not intended for storage. in order to get the hall back into the shape that it was meant to be. And there's been some discussion as of late as to whether the current library at 800 square feet, give or take, might become available and that we could save that expenditure. And so we're starting to have those discussions at the hall board now too, is whether we can maybe hold off for a little bit longer. So that affects, you know, the budget for 2025, 2026. Projects that might happen at the hall versus building on. And so there's, you know, more than just one or two things that get affected by our decisions here now.
And as most things in life, once you start one ball rolling, a whole bunch more start rolling at the same time. And hence the need for us to be very clear on what we want. The other thing that isn't in this report, but I do think the staff working on a list of potential architects for this project. At one point, there was discussion about trying to be ready to start building next year. And that's gonna take a few months apart, like once you find an architect you want. That's gonna take a few months of their time and then estimating costs and all that sort of stuff, so that would be the other thing that isn't necessarily in the report, but I do think we need to start saying you know, who or what kind of architect we want.
We have some of those conversations with SPH Engineering, and we're looking to work with them on some recommendations. But what I'm hearing right now from the council is, before we get to that point, you want to have, you know, several options for the architect that we work with and who we select moving forward.
Councilor,
I guess what I just want to be careful that we don't do is build a carbon copy of Zora if that's not what we need, right? And so just because this firm did work for Zora doesn't necessarily make them the best option for Southwest Oxford. It may well be. But I just want to make sure we're clear on what we need and what the best path forward is for Southwest Oxford.
so did SPF do the engineering or the architect work?
They were contracted for design build. They did engineering, but then they were also the they were the contractor, right?
And there was something
General
else.
contractor. They are in Southwest Oxford, yes.
Which, I mean, I'm glad we reached out to them to ask, and the fact that they recommended. I think we want to be careful that we don't get, you know, too focused on one, so. Okay, other discussion on this, Councilor, there's any comments you want to make?
Well, no, actually, I've enjoyed listening to everyone and actually, I think we should go further and maybe approve on authorizing staff to obtain the quotes.
Okay, you're making that motion?
Yes, I do.
Okay, David seconded. Motion by Gillis. And the motion will be resolved, the council receives the report from CAO 6/2025 from the commission and further resolved, the council approves the continuation of services with SPH Engineering for the following: one, continuing engineering work related to the conceptual design of the proposed childcare municipal office building that outlined attached to the total project proposal number 24-153 for a cost of $8,900 plus $850. And two, engineering work related to site preparation, grade review, and retaining wall design for the details in the attached project proposal 24-153A for a cost of $6,620 plus $850. And for the result, council authorized staff to obtain quotes and award the geotechnical report investigation component required for this project, with staff required to report back to council on associated costs. Any discussion on that? So I would just say, I'm a little concerned when it says childcare and municipal office and doesn't add into other potential uses. So that's covered in the middle. But I do think that conceptually, if you get one, then probably whichever it is, whichever is the larger, then actually starts to determine what the other floor does. And that may determine whether you need a third floor or not. And I guess that would be a question for council. Do we want to at least explore the idea of, or are we open to the idea of exploring municipal municipal, or sorry, council chambers or library being on another floor. Or would it all have to be on 2 floors, which is another possibility, right? There's no rule, it has to be 3 high, it could be a bigger building, but. I don't want to hamstring staff in having these conversations, because my read of council is that they're quite open to exploring a number of possibilities, rather than saying, no, it's gotta be just this, so Councillor, Bills.
I would agree that basically we're gonna let staff figure this out and give us the concepts and thoughts that may work. I'm not gonna limit them whether it be 2 or 3 stories, it's what we can do and how it's gonna work and how it's gonna work most efficiently for us.
Yeah, I'll just add, so in the proposals that were attached to the report and coming from the last meeting we had, they are going to look at options for a 3rd floor. Some of the things that we discussed were relocating the council chamber to the 3rd floor, having like a committee or community space with washrooms available to the public, as well as a library at a minimum of 2,000 square feet. So those are all things that were going to be included and part of these conceptual plans moving forward.
So that's all in the proposal?
Yes.
Whatever, 24, 153,
Yes.
all right, that's fine. Everybody's okay with that then? Okay, again, I don't want to, in any way hamstring, staff, we want them to explore it broadly, and I'd rather throw out 10 ideas than just one, so. Okay, motion done for, any further discussion, questions or comments? Awesome. No problem with this being funded from, it doesn't say this in the motion, that it's being funded from the modernization funding,
That's,
doesn't say so in the motion.
we should like the.
So, that, leading first engineering services with SPH engineering for the following, and then it'll be funded by, modernization grant.
Yes.
Okay, agreeable to the mover and seconder? Okay, any further discussion? None, all those in favor? That's good. Okay, I think we're at, clerk's report, year-end bylaw. Go ahead, please.
I don't really have too much to add to this report. That's just provided for council's information, shows the bylaw enforcement stats as of the end of 2024. Going into 2026, we do still have 2 ongoing property standards matters that we're continuing to work on.
Any discussion or questions? Councilor Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there work being done on a particular property in Suffolk? Okay.
There's one in Selburne that is ongoing and one in Beachville.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, the motion then to receive reports information. Moved by Booker, second by Gillis, result of council of Township of Suffolk, Oxford Street Report CL 2025 to 2024 year-end bylaw enforcement activity report. This information. Any further discussion? None, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. CL 14.
So this is a follow-up report to the report I brought a couple of, or last month, I guess, regarding an update to the township's procedural bylaw. Following that meeting, we had a management meeting and we were talking about implementation of the bylaw and implementing the changes and bringing them forward. And it came up that we could consider adding a consent agenda as part of our regular council meeting agendas. There are portions within our meeting that kind of follow the same idea of a consent agenda. So our agenda items in correspondence, information items in correspondence, accounts payable report, as well as our committees section on our agenda. So it came out, we could include a consent agenda, which would include all of these types of items that are being provided to council as information. They would be presented as a whole. There wouldn't be any individual presentation of any of these reports from staff unless it was asked of council. So I just brought this forward as something to consider and to get some direction from council on whether or not they'd like to see this as part of our processes moving forward. A member of council can pull anything off the consent agenda, but we could also include things like staff reports that are provided as information only, that could be put on our consent agenda. Anyways, it just bringing it forward as a thought and looking for some direction from council if you want me to include that in the final version of the amended bylaw.
Okay, so, I have some experience with consent agendas and, but I'll, leave it to council to decide. Council Booth.
I know, Conservation Ontario does that, with all their meetings, is that, they send out all the, like you said, the consent agenda, and then if you want one that, to be discussed in depth, you request that it be, removed from the consent agenda. And it seems to work very well for them, and like I said, it frees up a lot of time instead of everybody sitting here pausing and saying, oh yeah, I want that one done. So it just speeds things up a little bit, so they're not taking so much time with all those, correspondence and stuff like that.
Any other questions or comments? So Councillor Gittler.
This is my first experience, this is the first time I'm hearing about this concept, and my initial reaction is to be uneasy about it. And my fear is, and I've read this report through several times, my fear is that things are gonna get missed more easily. Because it's gonna be a lump sum block, in particular the staff reports. Accounts payable, I can kind of see in a way, correspondence, yes, because that's essentially no different from what we're doing now with correspondence. But it makes me uneasy because I think there's a greater opportunity for things to get missed.
Councillor Gills.
Yeah, I haven't seen it before either. I'll share, Councilor Yudma's concerns, kind of the same. I think that, whether it takes me an extra 5 minutes longer at a meeting, I think it's my job to go through everything thoroughly. And if I miss something, at least it'll give me a chance to go back through it. Or if somebody brings it up, oh yeah, I had a comment on that. It'd be easier to do. Plus, I think, as far as payroll and the financial statements, I think they should probably be separate anyways, because we should know where we're spending our money on. And, the comments come out of that. If we're unsure, we should be asking about that. So, I'm not objective to try it, but I'm not committed to saying I don't know how to do it.
Councillor Thurston.
Thank you, Mr. I'm wondering if we could hear your experience with working with this. And that would help me make my decision.
So my concern, like, if you're trying to get through the meeting in a hurry, it saves having to pass 6 motions to get 6 items done, right? You get them all done. My concern is that sometimes if there's 6 items in there and people think like this is a way of speeding up the meeting, they're reluctant to say, well, I really would like to talk about it. And the problem with that is that if someone brings up one item on a consent agenda item, it often spurs a conversation that probably should have happened. So I'm not actually opposed to consent agenda items, as long as people are very comfortable about saying, yeah, no, I want to talk about that one. And so at the county, we don't have a consent agenda. They do put all of the correspondence, or almost all of the correspondence, and information items into a package, and you actually have to send in an email saying, I want to talk about A, B, or C, right? Never happens. Just never does. And so I guess the point about the finance one, we were elected to be responsible for certain things. And one of the things that people want us to be most responsible of is the dollars and cents. And therefore, that's one that I would never want on a consent agenda. I would always want the financial report separate, so that we each voted on what's in front of us every single time. Because while we agreed to it in the budget, I think we should be 100% responsible for every penny spent. So I tend not to want that one in. The correspondence, right now we kind of notify a group of them at once. We don't, unless somebody wants to talk about one. I think that was well enough. If our meetings were, 4 or 5 hours long, I'd probably be more in favor of the consent agenda. I kind of think we get through things fairly quickly. I can see the usefulness of it, but I also have some concerns that, to the point made earlier, we might slide by something that if it was actually in front of you and you had to pass a recommendation on it, it might spur some discussion, and sometimes those little ideas kind of spur a whole new thought about where we should go on things, so. I'm not opposed to it, I just, I'd probably say, well, if you want to have a consent agenda, go ahead, but as long as council's willing to pull everything out that they want, and what would be allowed in or out of the consent agenda, that's another conversation too. Appreciate staff bringing the idea forward, I really do. So. Any further discussion? The other option would be, oh, sorry, Council.
I'm just saying, in Conservation Ontario, and they only have 4 meetings over the course of the year, so they're maybe looking at something that works better for them as a consent agenda, whereas when we're meeting twice a month for the most part of the year, it's not as onerous to just go through them individually as correspondence.
That's Swift does a consent agenda, they only do 4 times a year as well, and like I say, 4 times a year as the board. But they'll have 5 things in the consent agenda, and at least 2 of them get pulled out every time. And I don't mind at all, but I understand why staff want to do that, because they're also on you're on a Zoom call, and people don't like being on a Zoom call for more than 3 hours, so. At least it doesn't seem like they do, so. So it's up to council, what do you want to do with this? Or we could defer decision until the other 2 councilors show up, and whatever that is, if they have strong feelings, then we're gonna.
I move to defer.
Just have
I'll
that
second it.
until, let's say, first meeting in May or something.
Yeah.
Okay, I think everybody's here first meeting in May unless they're on the land. Which case, you'll have to call in from the tax. I'm just not sure when they get back in April. I know George is back first of April, but you wanna have, I think, Jim is back first meeting in April. So first meeting in April, we reasonable day. Okay. All right, so defer to first meeting in April. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. CO 15.
So this report is just to bring forward a request that we received from the Speedbird Mine Ball Association for council's consideration. They would like to implement a fence sign advertising campaign at the Speedbird Ball Diamond. So their proposal is attached to the report, and I've outlined what their proposed fee structure is. This would allow local businesses an opportunity to purchase a sign, and then their sign will be mounted to the Ball Diamond throughout the season. Businesses can sign up for 1 year at a time or up to 3 years at a time. They are responsible for purchasing their own sign. Mary Ellen discussed this with the group, and they were is supportive of the request, and in general, staff is supportive of the request, provided we make sure that they are compliant with the township sign policy. So we would provide them with a copy of the sign policy, and as I outlined in the report, there are some limitations there on who they would be able to offer this to. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions from council? Any comments? Councilor Gilch, you're first.
I'm fine with this, I think that it's a great way, if it helps them fundraise some money for them, go for it.
Councilor Yitman, you're next.
There seems to be a thriving community spirit within Speedbird, and this, I think, has potential to go over very well. I'd say absolutely.
Any other comments? This the do we have any feedback from Parks and Rec? They're kind of a separate, the mining balls are separate division. And they run, you know, kind of run the ball down, but, Parks and Rec, since it's kind of part, that would be my only comment would be, was it okay, you know, did they run it by Parks and Rec?
That's a good question. Mary Ellen discussed with them directly, and so I'm actually not sure what their feedback was.
So I'm wondering if we should just, pause this and ask Parks and Rec if they have any concerns. Because I can support it as well, right? It's just, the ball diamond is kind of a subset of the, like, it isn't really part of the Parks and Rec environment. And, I was wondering if we should, defer this until the next meeting about Parks and Rec on it. And Jim may already know what the answer is.
They may have talked to Mary Ellen about it. Yeah, my apologies, I'm not sure about that part of it.
Okay,
But okay.
Councillor Brookman.
All right, just a question or a query. Would this open up to any individual wanting to do it on his property? Same thing in charge for it, because I know in Tillsonburg, there's a few, places where there are signs on it. I've seen a couple in Norfolk County where it's all around one corner and it's guy's private property and he's got signs all around it.
So they would be subject to the requirements of the township sign by law, if people wanted to put signs up on private property.
So I don't want to discourage us, I just, want to be respectful of, as a blessing or the okay from, Parks and Rec would be my concern. Councillor Gills.
Is there a possibility that we could approve it pending, notification from Parks and Rec approving? That way, as long as we have to come back again if, they let staff know that they're good with it.
I think it'd be better if we didn't put pressure on Parks and Rec on one another, and let them say yes or no. The vision between what's Parks and what's, minor ball is probably not 100% clear all the time. So the motion would be to, defer until we've heard from Parks and Rec.
So receive the report as information and then defer the request, until we have confirmation from super person.
Councillor,
Could we also ask staff then to contact Councilor Pickering and have this brought forward to Parks and Rec? So that we don't just sit on this for the next 3 months.
Awesome.
Thanks.
yeah, I would like to hear this as quickly as possible because they actually want to have this, in place expecting the next month too, right? So that's why I don't want to, belabor it too much, but I would like to, and get some kind of, okay, so the motion is to defer and, Councilor Pickard will be, and we have a mover and second for that. Moved by Gillis, second by Pearson. Any further discussion? You can see this information and all that is one, okay. All those in favor? Oh, that's great. And grass cutting contract. And
Okay, WD 2/2025 seeks council's approval to award the grass cutting contract to D&D Property Maintenance Limited. $2,725 per cut price. D&D has done this contract in the past, I believe 5 years ago. We do work with D&D on some grass cutting or some snow removal currently from the township. I did vet the references that were provided by the contractor, and they did check out. There were large school boards within the area that they're already cutting now. So yeah, it would be my recommendation to award to D&D.
any questions on this? Councilor,
Where are they from? Beechwood. D&D's out of Beechwood area.
Same as what we're using right now.
Yeah.
any other questions? Adam, I was surprised when we had 2 bids.
Yeah, so I was surprised as well. We did reach out, staff reached out to 5 when the tender went live on our website, but we did receive only 2 bids, so.
So Does that tell us, there's not many people interested in this kind of work? Or is it people are just booked up and they're not looking to expand their business?
I think there's some that have gotten out of the business. Last time we tendered 5 years ago, we received 9 bids. So I was just surprised as well at 2. I think there's some like say they've got out of the business and they've also are already booked up or have what they need.
And the price is the same for both years?
Both 25 and 26, and we have an option to extend for 2 1-year periods in the contract. We can also add on any other public space on this contract, some of the last ones, so if Mount Logan Cemetery wants to hop on for the same terms of the tender, they can as well.
Okay. Councillor Booker.
Adam, is there any set schedule of long between cuts? Because I know last year it was terrible because it was getting so long.
Yeah,
That it was a mess when they cut, it was getting tracked all over.
so ideally it's weekly, but if additional cuts are needed, it stays in the tender for that. So we do have, if this is approved, we have a set up meeting with the contractor prior to the growing season, so we'll express that with them when it comes time, if they need to cut twice a week.
Yeah. And that they stop and pick up the garbage, they just cut it.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor,
I was just surprised at the discrepancy between the two quotes. Huge difference.
The other contract, or the other bid that was submitted by Mount View, they're at a Drumbo, so there's quite a bit of travel time for them.
so the direction from council is? Oh,
I just wanna make one note, there was an error on the report, just under background, it says 21 properties were listed on the township website on the 21st, it was actually 23, which is further down the report, it does state the 23 properties, but I just wanted to note that.
okay. Thank you. Anything, or any other discussion from council? Need a motion then. Councillor Hickman, you're going ahead.
I would move the report.
And we're seconded by Gerson. Resolved that Councillor Stu report WD 225 commission and further that the council approves the tender bid of $2,725 per cap plus applicable taxes from D&D commercial property maintenance limited for the 2025 and 2026 grass cutting season. Any further discussion? Councillor,
Just one further question, Adam, what are we paying for cut for the, like, the last
Year
year?
that was around 1,800 per ton.
okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I guess the question I should have asked Adam is, this within your budget?
It is, yeah.
Okay. We're now down to agenda items correspondence. Motion there, 31 to 33. Councillor Booker.
No file, because I think the whole safety, we've been harping on it ourselves as well, so.
Okay. I moved it to the seconder. Seconded by Gillis. That 31 to 33 be noted in file. Any questions, Councillor Gillis, sorry.
Just a question for you, Mr. Mayor, on the county report. Your first one there, February 12th, the third point there, about the hookups there, is that because of a new septic system?
So, there's been, this is on Hampton Road, they're running the sewer out to, do this subdivision and, I would call it a former pie farm.
Yeah.
But, and people along there, don't want to, hook up to the sewers. And so they have to pay for the line across in front of their property, but they don't actually have to hook up. Until 20 years after the installation of the septic system. The idea being that you get sort of some of your return on investment in that septic system. So that's, but nobody's gonna be able to put in a new one. So, the problem becomes that, if it's 20 years after you put in the pipe, or is it 20 years after you put in the septic? And so they're not particularly happy with this. They would like it 20 years from now before they have to hook up, regardless of how old the septic system is. And some of those septic systems are old. But it used to be 10 years, and council moved one. I think it was reasonable and, at some point, you build something, with the intent that people would use it, in an urban area. And, but. Council, that's the council this evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else on any of those correspondence, Councillor Gibbon?
And under the same report, February 26, item 7, talking about software implementation. I actually read that one to my wife last night because she's always very conscious of the cost of our bookkeeping program for the farm. And I said, I don't think we have a lot to worry about in comparison to the cost that Oxford County is incurring on this program. Some, what was it here? 850,000 to install it, and then 185,000 a year to maintain it.
So, not being a real fan of software myself, $1 million for software, installation and then operation, and 185,000 a year to maintain the license seems awfully high. And then you think, well, you've got approximately 800 employees that it does both scheduling, which in Whittingford Lodge is a huge issue, right? Because there's an awful lot of part-time or like this, I think it's 200 and some, 260 or 70 employees there. And you have 3 lodges trying to fill, to make sure that they've got exactly the right number of hours. I can understand the scheduling part, I can understand, you know, and then to get the scheduling and the payroll part becomes part of it. And this also includes the HR component. So, yeah, it's a really complex system. And it's probably better to have it all in one than to spread it out. But and like to have 3 different softwares, probably. But $1,033,000 is one heck of a pile of money. And it better last as long as Great Plains, which we've had Great Plains for over 20 years, right? And when do we get rid of our Great Plains? Or have we?
No, we still have it. It will actually go out probably by 2029.
But it's our Great Plains is completely financial. We don't have any HR, we don't have any scheduling or anything like that. So if you think about it, like, and ambulance is the other one that you've got to have people there every single hour of the day, right? So the scheduling part, I can actually see where I don't mind spending a bit of money on that. But yeah. I just, well, yeah, if you back up, what did we spend on Great Plains 20 years ago? Like that, I don't know, so, but for my time, so. Yep. So, but then, on the other hand, if you read the next one, county's got 275 million in assets or in investments. Most of them are on water and wastewater, where you have to have the money there to, like, you know, building up reserves. And then you spend 20 million on something. And so some of that, I think we're getting to a point where we probably have enough in a lot of areas. I think there's areas where if you look at the reserve continuity of the county, there's places where we need to do better.
I just wondered if number 8 was placed where it was in order to make number 7 a little more palatable.
No, it was just the way I read through the agenda, so. Okay, moved and seconded the note and file of 31 to 33. Any discussion, further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's good. Accounts payable, the motion to approve. Moved by Yipman, second by Gillis, result of the following accounts be approved, payment of accounts payable for February 16th to March 1st, 2025, $242,598.58. Payroll number 4, general, $67,724.32. Payroll number 2, council, $8,403.71, and payroll number 2, fire, $31,840.52. For a grand total of $351,569.52. Any discussion? Lost a check for 48.
There you go.
Adam.
I generally, a check that big, I generally don't lose. We can't say the name out loud. Okay.
Wasn't us though.
Wasn't us.
I'm pretty sure it was none of the council. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's great. And information and correspondence. It was 34 to 40. Councillor Gifford.
Move to note and file.
And we have seconded by Gillis. Before we pass it, I guess, that was the other area that I wanted, we should have a bit of a discussion. Apparently tariffs start today, and, we see a fair amount of, pushback and both in the press, and here. And I would caution us as council. What I think we're seeing is reaction rather than positive action. And my theory is always, if whatever you do doesn't solve the problem, then it's probably wrong. And the real problem here is not the tariffs being imposed on Canada. They're a problem. But the real problem is the source of those tariffs. And so, you know, you do something to me, so you poke me in the eye, so I poke you in the eye, well, you end up with two blind people, and that's probably not a smart idea. So I would encourage us, rather than to simply respond by, reaction, that we actually figure out what is the reasonable way forward. And I'm not saying, and to be very clear, I'm not saying it shouldn't be tariffs. I'm just saying it shouldn't be a reaction. It should actually respond to the problem. And so there's a number of levels of problems here, and tariffs is one level. I'm not sure it's the biggest problem. And I think the demonstration there at the Oval Office with the president of Ukraine shows us that the problem might be far greater than, and far greater for Canada than we think it is. And so I'm just wanting us to be careful that we don't react in a way that is, people are built for fight or flight, right? That's human nature since the beginning of time. And that's where you survive. And so I tend to think that the smart people actually back up a minute and say, wait a minute, what's the best way forward here? And tariffs might be it, right? Or buy Canadian might be it. Councillor Durston said to me the other day something about, I'd always been harping about buy local. I always will. I want to support my friends and neighbors in my community. And I can't support everybody in the world, so I'm going to support the people I know. So I don't have any problem with us buying local, but I do think we want to be very careful with what we're doing. Doesn't actually inflame the situation worse than it already is. So, having said all that, and here ends the sermon for the morning. So the motion was to note and file from, I think, the 34 to 40. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're now down to bylaws and agreements. And the first one is private drainage, third reading only, right?
Yeah, we can do that in the next.
Yes. So we're gonna do first and second readings. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Can we talk about bylaw number 20 first? Yes. Okay. I have the indulgence for just a minute. Bylaw number 20. The agreement on that bylaw, or sorry, the subdivision agreement, a couple of things in there that are I think fixed. So this is the actual subdivision agreement with the developer that says this is what he'll do, this is what we'll do. So in page note H of page 9, it has a limit on how much he's going to pay for 600 amp service. With an upset limit of $20,000. So in discussion with Mary Ellen last week on this, I said, how do we know that $20,000 in a year's time or 2 years' time actually is the right number? And his obligation is actually to provide it. And because Hydro won't give him a quote until after they have an actual project to do, which I understand, I'm not knocking Hydro. He's used a number of $20,000. So I reached out to Earth and asked them, you know, is 20,000 enough? And I kind of described, and they have just done one. I think it was in Mitchell. And the $50,000 to $20,000 seemed, I think it was, they did last year. I think it was kind of in the right ballpark. And so I wonder if we shouldn't have an upset limit of 25,000. Because this may be 2 or 3 years down the road, right? By the time we actually have a park and know exactly what we're gonna build or what we need and before we're gonna need power there. So it's our agreement. We have to be agreeable to everything, just as Brian was. If we had an upset limit of 25 instead of 20, I feel like, especially the way prices have gone, and if there's tariff costs on this, I don't think 5,000 more is an unreasonable number. And not knowing what date we're gonna do this. My preference would be, as soon as we know what the park's gonna look like and know what we need in the park, we would do it sooner rather than later. But I would say, I don't wanna push out agenda too fast. Because I want the community to be satisfied with what they're getting. So. Councilor,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the event that we move it to the price that you suggested, and it costs more, it costs more, who pays?
that's what the upset limit is he's saying, I want a number that it isn't gonna be $1 million. Well, I understand that. And I'm not objecting to the $20,000 being the right number for 2024. I'm not sure it's the right number for 2026 or 2027, when this work actually gets done. And so asking for more, if it comes in at 15,000, great, he doesn't have to pay it. But part of the agreement was that he would provide power for that sort, right, for that site. And in my mind, and I understand wanting to have sort of a limit to it, but in my mind, too bad, so sad, that's part of the cost of development. And if we're gonna put a number in, then I think it should be the right number, or I would say don't put a number in at all. So I'm just looking for council's feedback on that and whether you want to change it or not. Adam, do you have any comments?
No, the initial thought on 600 came from Earth originally. We contacted Earth to see what we would need there for power, and they said don't do anything less than 600. We do have a consultant lined up for what the park might look at it and may come back at 200, which they would provide.
400.
Yeah, so it would definitely be better at 25 than 20, just to cover all bases for sure. We did reach out to Earth a few months ago to ask for a price, but they didn't want to give us a hard number on paper what it costs. Understandable.
Well, because they don't actually know unless it's specific 600.
Yeah.
And is that one phase or 3 phase? Because that was the other thing that Earth asked, which
Be single phase.
if you need 3 phase and you don't have it there, then it becomes, you know, incredibly expensive. So
I believe Hydro, either way, they're bringing the Hydro off of Milligan Road rather than the subdivision, so there is 3 phase on Mount Elgin if needed.
we pay for that all the way.
Yeah.
And that would not be 25,000.
No, I can't imagine why we would need 3 phase, but maybe things about
Other than apparently some of the new ballpark lakes and that are operate out 3 phase.
okay.
So if I were, and again, we don't know what the park's gonna have, right? So it's hard to say, yeah, we want this or we want that. 3 phase ballpark lakes operate cheaper than 1 phase, so. Councilor,
My initial reaction to this, and you did mention a minute ago, would be to remove the limit altogether.
Okay.
The deal is you provide service, whatever that costs at the time that you provide it.
Julie, you want to say?
I don't know that Brian will agree to that. Just because that's where the unsettlement came from, because that's how we originally ordered the agreement, and he said no and asked for an unsettlement. Sorry.
So the agreement has to be satisfactory to both sides.
And the agreement was you provide service.
I'm not disagreeing with you. The 25 was simply in my mind a way of, giving us a bit of cushion. Counselor,
Will we be able to get the service? Seriously, I know that the Tillsonburg Airport had wanted service. I know they've had their problems in getting them. Can he get what he needs for the subdivision?
go ahead.
And speaking with Hydro, when they did the design for the rest of the subdivision, 600 wasn't gonna be a problem. They just needed to know where they were going with it and who was paying. So there was no cost, there's no issue with getting a 600,
Okay, thank you.
other than it has to come off Mount Auburn.
Other questions or comments?
Well, based on Julie's comment, then, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that we at least put 30,000 in there in order to move this along. If it's likely that it's gonna be refused by Brian, if we don't put an upper limit on it, that we at least put an additional 50% on.
I go with that. Counselor, I would agree. Sorry, I would agree with that. Okay, so, let's, amend it to 30,000. The other thing is, page 11. Obviously, this, agreement is written for, everybody. Page 11, Julie, it says somewhere, let's see, oops, I'm sorry. It says city rather than township.
Oh, inspection work.
Yeah, under inspection works. Number 9, inspection works about 2 sentences up from the bottom.
Yeah.
It says city. Other than that, I didn't see anything that, troubled me on this. Okay. And, any other questions or comments on any of the bylaws? This site plan, there was a discussion with Brian about lot coverage. Is that in the subdivision agreement or what's it in?
Are you talking, he's going through with the minor variance application to address some of that? So it's not in the subdivision agreement, it's a different application.
Okay, so he has asked for, a minor variance. The potential builders were asking for a slightly larger footprint on the lots, I think in this, for phase 1. In the center section there, where they wanted to go from, I think it's 38% coverage to 45. I think that's what they're.
I don't have a specific details yet, but yes, something along those lines. And I thought there were some reduced setbacks as well.
Well, the back, the rear yard will be smaller. Anyways, that's not on this, that's something we have to decide, in the future, but just making sure that, we're aware, okay. Have you seen the, minor variance application yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. Anything further on this? Counselor, yeah.
On that site plan, is it important that we don't have the updated road names and so on there? Or does that not matter at this point?
That's not the most current one.
Yeah,
So
so,
there is a current one that has all the updated road names. That will be attached to the agreement. My apologies, that's not the right one.
Because I know that even in our last discussion when Brian Graydon was here, we had agreed to change the name of, I believe it was Highland Drive on this current plate, to Cooper, wasn't it? Is that the one?
yeah,
And that wasn't included at the time that Brian was here in our last set of discussions, so.
so you have a different map than this one. And, Park Ave and, Silvers Oscar Drive. I don't remember that.
That's Elgin Drive.
Yeah, anyway, so this map isn't the right map.
I just didn't know whether that was pertinent to this discussion or not.
So, what that map, oh, I see, you're calling it. Yeah, so this one's right. The phase one map, if you exclude the rest of it, the phase one map that Julie has here on this screen is actually right. It has Houston and, Bidwell, Blunt, and Elgin.
Okay, Cooper, that's this one has Cooper as well.
Yes. Okay. So, we need to fix the agenda here by replacing that with, proper. Right?
Yes, it would be this one.
Yeah. We can update the agenda for, the future. We don't need to right now, we know what we're,
So, okay, so for the bylaw, do you want me to amend the bylaw and bring it back before authorizing the bylaw? Or are you looking at?
I,
as amended?
so, two things here, one, we need to have a great map, and the second one is, we need to have some kind of buy-in, the $30,000 becomes, the new number under, section whatever. Note H, page 9. So, that's back and that's a bylaw.
That's what we're taking.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna skip bylaw number 2025. And we're just doing bylaws, 5, 18, and 19. Okay, so first time reading of 18 and 19. Moved by Gillis, second by Butcher.
Felt that the following bylaws be introduced, may be read at first and second time. Bylaw number 18, 2025 being a bylaw to appoint persons to the Suffolk Health Board. Bylaw number 19, 2025 being a bylaw to amend Township of Douglas Oxford zoning bylaw for zone change application 42405.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. And third and final reading for the 3. Moved by, sorry. Moved by Gerson, seconded by Gillis.
Resolved that bylaws 05, 2025, 18, 2025, and 19, 2025 be read a third time and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk are authorized to sign the bylaws and affix the corporate seal.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Nothing under new business yet, so, we want to take a 5-minute break. And, then we'll come back to, council roundtable and close session. Okay, too long. Council roundtable. So, Councilor Ways and, figured you're excused, but, let's start with one and we'll just go right up.
Okay, there's not a whole lot going on. The AGM is a week from tomorrow. Hopefully we can grab a few new members because a few of our members are with health issues and age. It would be nice to have some refreshing younger people on, but it's really tough to get them on. So I know Pete runs into the same problem. Other than that, it's been pretty quiet down there, other than the Trillium grant has been submitted and hopefully cross our fingers. Although somebody made a comment that on Facebook that 225,000 was a lot for a playground.
Sure is. And tonight is pancake night at,
Pancake firefighters in Brownsville, yeah, come down and
hungry.
fill yourself up.
Okay, Ward 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fairly quiet in Ward 2 right now as well. The health board met on February 24th and still kicking around new ideas for fundraisers. And then also there was a very brief discussion on the potential for the library to move and what implications that would have towards any kind of renovations to the building. Since that meeting, I did have a chat with our chairman. We have agreed to spend money on new washroom stall dividers. And we both kind of agreed that it might be better that we hold off on that for a little bit too, pending maybe a more extensive renovation of the washrooms in lieu of an addition to the building. So we're just starting to talk about those sorts of things now. So any kind of potential building project we may be put on hold for a little bit. The LTRCA AGM meeting is coming up this Friday at 1:30. We've reported in the minutes, and I failed to mention that when we reviewed the minutes, but it was reported there at 1 p.m. and it's actually 1:30. And then Durham Center Hall Board has their AGM on March 19th, and I believe that's all I have to report right now.
So, Brownsville, wow.
No, a week from tomorrow.
Yes, I say a week tomorrow.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and Ward 3.
It's very quiet in Ward 3. We, our meeting tonight is Sulphur, and discussion will center on fundraising that we're planning on doing. Don't know what we're doing yet, but they're going to be discussing it. I attended the airport meeting, and it went well. I have the minutes here to pass on. I also, well, we have the Engage and Inform Committee meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and we do have a speaker attending, and she'll be speaking on food. That's not the name of her presentation. I know that Judy Brown is coming to listen also, or she said she was going to come to listen. She thought it would be interesting. And I wonder, do you know if anyone else will be attending?
A couple of the people from the food project in Ingersoll,
The food project?
or whatever they call it, the new warehouse at the
Oh, okay, yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Excellent,
okay, yeah.
excellent.
So, Rotary Club is sponsoring that in Ingersoll. So they have leased the gymnasium from the old Suzuki House as a food warehouse from General Motors, and using it as a distribution center. The intent is to use it as a distribution center for all of the groups that need food, right? So instead of each group having to have their own warehouse and all that, could they have a combined one and then disperse it from one central location rather than groups in Tillsonburg having to figure theirs out in Ingersoll and Woodstock and all that. So I don't know too many of the details. That's all I know so far, but
Excellent.
and they're on their own, like the Rotary Club is funding it.
Okay.
Councillor, yeah.
May I ask a question of Councillor Gerson and then
Go ahead.
I was just scanning through your agenda for your engagement capital meeting for tomorrow. And I know it's a communication plan that's in there. And I didn't read through it in depth, but I just wonder, is there any mention of looking into the feasibility of an app to be used as a communication device within the township?
I went through it, but let's verify.
So I'm looking into that and I will be bringing a report back to council on that, because you brought that up at the strategic planning session. And so I looked into the citizen alert one. It's quite expensive. It's pretty cost prohibitive. But the county can actually set one up for us. So I'm kind of working with them on what the details of that might look like, but I will be coming back to council on that.
Okay, so the engagement form is looking at it as an initial look, and then it will come to counseling.
Yes.
So this is more of a comment period, and then it'll come to council, and if there's any thing that the engagement form maybe wanted to add or delete it, so. So you haven't seen it yet, because engagement form haven't done it yet, or haven't moved it on yet, so, but you will,
Yes.
next month probably. Okay, anything else for you?
No, actually, thank you. Oh, and the energy meetings tomorrow as well.
And we're gonna comment on the winter walk for warm.
I can. Would you like to vote in on that?
Okay, I can,
The final figures, I know that at a meeting for the winter walk for warmth it was cold, it was lovely, it was great, the turnout was low. But still, the fire department from Mount Elgin, I do believe, made, was it Beachville?
it was not okay.
Yeah, it's not like.
Oh, I thought you told me the beach bill, that's why Dave mentioned.
Well, did I say that?
Okay, I'll send it to my, okay. Okay,
They made a wonderful donation anyway.
they did, they sure
So
did.
appreciated, so appreciated.
So next year, we'll see if Beachville can keep up to my order, so, anyway. Okay, yeah, and, raised $240, which they took off person sharing and all the food.
Thank you.
Okay, and Ward 6.
Ward 6, believe it or not, lots going on in the last little while. Parks and Rec had their AGM last week, thanks to Brooke for coming. We'll still be working through a few of the questions we had regarding our financial statements. Hopefully I'll get those all figured out today, but other than that, it was a good turnout for the crew this year. Working at our project, being able to work on doing a pavilion this year, so that's good. As far as the museum goes, the Historical Society's AGM is next Tuesday. And then the board meeting is next Wednesday. Museum, so we'll see what's going on there. Other than that, been involved in lots of things in the area, but the day of the walk for winter warmth, I was helping out with the new recruit training at the fire station, so that was fun and entertaining at the same time, working with new recruits and helping them get prepared for the joy of the firefighting. County area, so I think that was a great experience.
Okay. I don't think I have anything else to report, other than the one thing I did, forget to put in my report, was that the county, passed a motion to look at, living wage, so having staff look at living wage, what would be the impact of that? And living wage in Oxford is $19.50 an hour. And what would be the impact of it? So, we'll see what happens, in that report. I can't imagine that there's anybody at the county that's making less than $19.50 an hour. So I don't think there'll be much of an impact at all, but it does raise a number of questions around, Councillor Gillis mentioned, what about, firefighters or people that are making minimum wage now? And, it also raises a question around students and at what time do you, impose it? So I think there's maybe more, philosophical questions, but I think there's more practical questions than anything on it. So be interesting to see what happens there. Certainly public health is, sort of public health is pushing for a living wage in the area, from an health perspective. People don't make enough, usually don't eat properly, and then become sick and they pay for it in some other system. And having said that, you know, anybody that had the measles shots, their, vaccination for measles, probably should get it. 95% of everyone that has had measles in southwest public health region were people that, did not have a measles, immunization. So the 5%, most of those, and I don't remember the number, most of that were people that had one immunization and not second. So not that you won't get it, the other two, but the chances are very small. So, and, this isn't something that everybody wants to hear, so. Anyways, nothing else from me, so let's move on to, the closed session, the motion to go into closed session. Moved by Booker, second by Gillis, move into closed session, and it would be, discuss subject matter that is, I think it's more of a contractual nature. Okay, and, also, identify what individual. You might as well, I've already talked to him, but you might as well stay in case you want to make any comments to council. Okay, any discussion?